They build you up. And then once you get there, they're so quick to tear you down.
In 2004, Janet Jackson released her 8th studio album, Damita Jo. It debuted at number 2, it sold millions of copies worldwide, and yet, it became one of the most punished albums in pop history, effectively derailing Janet's career. Not because of the music, but because of a split-second incident that would become one of the biggest national scandals of our time. Janet Jackson entered the 2000s as one of pop music's most consistent and boundary-pushing artists. She never quite reached the dominance of Madonna, Mariah, Whitney or Celine in terms of sales or international reach, but she was critically respected, socially conscious, and a powerhouse performer. Every album, every tour, every single was executed with precision. In a landscape crowded with younger divas and emerging R&B stars, Janet's career was disciplined, ambitious, and carefully managed. By the time 2004 arrived, her position was seemingly secure. Although Son of a Gun, the final single from her previous album, 2001's All For You, became her first single in over a decade to miss the US top 10, it was treated as a minor footnote, not a warning sign. The All For You era itself had been a success. The title track was one of the biggest songs of 2001, broke airplay records and won a Grammy. In practical terms, Janet remained a major recording artist. She was still selling albums, still commanding radio and television, and still viewed by the industry as a reliable, bankable pop figure. There was no narrative of collapse, no sense that her relevance was in question. If anything, expectations for her next album were that it would perform well, as the continuation of a long, sustained career. That would all change on the 1st of February 2004. It should have been a career victory lap, a global stage reinforcing her legacy as one of pop's great performers. Instead, it became a public execution. One moment, a split second, decimated decades of goodwill.
Choose your music.
Choose to be different.
Offensive, embarrassing to us and our fans, and inappropriate.
Time duet has now sparked a federal investigation. This as the woman at the center of it all, Janet Jackson.
The so-called wardrobe malfunction triggered an outrage that was immediate, moralistic, and grotesquely uneven. Justin Timberlake emerged largely untouched.
Justin was emphatic the idea was not his.
Got in, didn't really have time to rehearse it. I mean, I was completely shocked and appalled, and I immediately covered her up. I mean, I was completely embarrassed.
Janet Jackson became the symbol of cultural decay.
Will Janet be banned from the Grammys? Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Hart.
And I'm Bob Goen. Her Super Bowl flash backfired.
The media narrative hardened fast. Suddenly, she was reckless, over-sexualized, and unpatriotic. The subtext was unmistakable. Race, gender, and power converging into a perfect scapegoat. This wasn't backlash, it was retribution.
Damita Jo.
Crucially, Damita Jo, her new album, arrived in an industry that had already turned against her. The album had been conceived and recorded long before the Super Bowl fallout. For the first time in years, Janet widened her creative circle beyond Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, bringing in multiple outside producers at scale, Kanye West, Dallas Austin, and Scott Storch among them. It was a deliberate shift, tuned into contemporary trends, aiming to hold her place in a rapidly shifting pop R&B landscape. Damita Jo wasn't meant to be a retreat, it was a recalibration. Tracks like My Baby and Strawberry Bounce pushed into new rhythmic territory, while I Want You, later Grammy nominated, proved Janet still had an instinct for elegance and restraint when she chose to exercise it. Even before release, single strategy was being debated internally. All Night Don't Stop, My Baby, and R&B Junkie were all considered as potential lead singles before the Dallas Austin produced Just a Little While was selected. A rock-edged, pivot designed to signal evolution whilst maintaining the pop sensibilities of All For You. But the industry closed ranks. Following the Super Bowl, Viacom, CBS, MTV, Infinity Broadcasting and Clear Channel, all facing heavy FCC fines and years of litigation that would ultimately reach the Supreme Court, retaliated quietly but decisively. Janet Jackson was blacklisted.
I am really sorry if I offended anyone. That was truly not my intention.
Her apology was deemed insufficient by CBS chairman Les Moonves. Music videos vanished, singles were frozen out. MTV, a network that had built much of its identity on Janet's image, abruptly disengaged.
Multiple sources say Moonves worked to get Jackson banned from MTV, VH1, CBS, and all Viacom-owned properties.
The hypocrisy was glaring. MTV continued to heavily rotate sexually explicit videos by others, while Janet's comparatively restrained visuals were nowhere to be found.
If they're going to worry about, children and what children shouldn't see, I think they should address all issues on TV. I think there's a lot of violence on television as well. And there's a lot of hypocrisy about beating up on Janet Jackson and not a lot of other things that children have access to.
An Associated Press report noted the eerie silence. A superstar, honoured as MTV's inaugural icon just 3 years earlier, suddenly erased. Just a little while initially showed real promise. Early airplay reports were strong. In some formats, it was being added more aggressively than 2004's biggest hit, Usher's Yeah. But once the blacklist took effect, the song virtually disappeared from radio rotation without explanation. Follow-up singles fared no better. All Night Don't Stop became a club staple and topped the US dance chart. The Kanye-produced I Want You found an audience on urban radio and earned Grammy recognition, but neither could cross into mainstream without institutional support. By the time promotional single R&B Junkie arrived, the campaign was already beyond saving. Reviews were mixed. Some critics praised the production and the album's sonic ambition. Others found it vocally poor, overly sexual, and lacking the cohesion of The Velvet Rope or All For You. The very thing that made the album adventurous, its multi-producer sprawl, also made it feel diffuse. Janet, at times, seemed to disappear into the production rather than command it. Commercially, the numbers told a complicated story. Damita Jo debuted at number 2 in the US with approximately 381,000 copies sold, the second biggest opening week of Janet's career. In isolation, that's a success. In context, it was a downturn. All For You had opened with over 600,000 copies just 3 years earlier and gone on to sell more than double Damita Jo's total. For the first time in 2 decades, Janet failed to debut at number 1. The album eventually went platinum in the US and sold over 3 million copies worldwide, respectable by any standard, especially in an era increasingly disrupted by file sharing and music piracy. But for Janet Jackson, it was framed as a failure.
When you released Damita Jo, it was a couple of years ago, the sales were not Janet Jackson type numbers. How much of that do you think was the fallout from the fact it came out kind of in the middle of Michael's trial for child molestation and the whole Super Bowl thing that you don't want to talk about?
I truly don't know. It was still a platinum album. But, it's so funny how it's just because which is success.
And then came the final indignity. For the first time since 1989's Rhythm Nation, Janet did not score to support a studio album. No redemption arc, no victory lap, no chance to reclaim the narrative. Whether Damita Jo would have become a true commercial resurgence without the Super Bowl fallout remains a matter of hindsight. Some believe it could have rivaled or even surpassed All For You, producing multiple hit singles and a strong international showing. Others might argue that, beneath the surface, the cultural tide was already shifting. Newer stars were commanding attention, pop and R&B were recalibrating, and Janet's era of unquestioned dominance may have been naturally softening, even if the industry hadn't yet acknowledged it. What's undeniable is this: Damita Jo was never allowed to fail or succeed on its own terms. It wasn't rejected by the audiences so much as abandoned by the industry. In hindsight, it stands as one of pop's clearest examples of institutional punishment masquerading as market response. A reminder that in pop music, scandal doesn't just derail careers, it rewrites them.
They build you up, and then once you get there, they're so quick to tear you down.
If Janet Jackson was punished by the system, one of her biggest rivals confronted it and lost. That artist's ninth studio album, American Life, shows what happens when provocation meets a culture at war.